to the Prophecy Club. You know, there's not very many things in life that we can claim originality on, or someone that can say, hey, you know, I started that, or I can say that I found that. But in this case, Prophecy Club and one of its people can claim, yep, we found this. Now, here's the story. Stephen Dollins, an ex-Satanist high priest of the Church of Satan and speaker on several videos with the Prophecy Club, including The Occult in Your Living Room, Under the Spell of Harry Potter, one day picked up a set of cards, and it was called Illuminati New World Order card game. He just stuck them in his drawer and didn't do anything with them until one day he pulled them out and was flipping through them, and he said all of a sudden he began to see something that he'd never seen before. He realized that this card game was far more than just a card game. You see, in the early 1990s, the Secret Service actually attempted to stop the distribution of a simple deck of cards called Illuminati New World Order, or were they just a simple deck of cards? One of the cards clearly portrays an airplane slamming into the World Trade Centers. Another shows the explosion at the Pentagon exactly like it happened. Stephen says that they seem to contain the Illuminati's secret plans for things like martial law, weapons confiscation, population reduction, controlled diseases re-released, a financial collapse coming, and by the way, that may be hitting any day now, worthless currency, that also may be hitting any day now, and the two events just prior to the coming of the Antichrist, all paralleling Bible prophecy. Now, I think you'll find this deck of cards and what he shows you in these deck of cards very interesting, and we're going to make an unbelievable offer for this DVD, normally valued at $30. Today, just a gift of $15. Steve Dollins, Illuminati, game or blueprint for world domination.
Hosea 4:6 says, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." Look at that word, destroyed. Now, that's why it's important to study and know these things. God does not want us to be ignorant of our enemy. It doesn't even make military logic. When you go to war against someone, you want to know how he operates. You want to know what his strategies are. You want to know how he operates behind the lines. You want to know also what his strengths and what his weaknesses are before you go into battle with him. Well, the same thing. God wants us to be knowledgeable of our enemy. 1 Kings 11:2. Now, God is talking to wise old Solomon. He's talking to the house of Israel. But how many know that when God speaks to one, he speaks to all? In other words, he's not just speaking to one, he's addressing all. And if he speaks to one nation, it's not just one nation, he's speaking to all. And just using them as the object. And in 1 Kings 11:2, it says, "Ye shall not go into them," talking about going into different countries, "neither shall they come in unto you, for surely," watch this, "they will turn away your heart after their gods." You see, Solomon was very wise, but good old Solomon had a lot of concubines, and he took several wives, quite a few. And those wives were from different countries, different nations, and they served different gods, and they brought those gods with them. And they talked old Saul into putting those gods into the temple. What God is saying is, don't go in unto them, nor let them come in unto you, for surely they'll turn away your heart. And what did we do with the United States, dear old United States of America? We adopted an open door policy. And we said, give us your weak, give us your tired, give us your poor, you're hungry. We should have included you're occultic, you're possessed, you're pagan. You know, and that's exactly what we did. We opened up the door and let these different gods in. Brothers and sisters, the United States of America was based on this. We were never to accept any other gods but the one God, the one true God. The Illuminati was founded by a Bavarian named Adam Weishaupt. He was very high in canon law. He was a Jesuit. And he had one major goal, and that goal was to take all the secret societies at that time, unite them as one, and then they could govern everything. Because they looked at governments as being inapt. In other words, they could not run a country the way that it should be run. And they also looked at that people were kind of like animals, that we didn't know what decisions to make for us. We didn't know the right decisions to make for us. So we needed someone to make those decisions and to govern us. Well, that's kind of like what's going on right now. And this was started in May 1st, 1776. And they developed a basic premise, and that was order out of chaos. In other words, make an order out of chaotic things. Now, in order to have chaos, you've got to create it. And then what you do is you step in and take over and you solve all the problems, and then you become what? The Savior of mankind. And that's what they intended to do. Now, we said this was begun in May 1st, 1776. Now, wait a minute. Isn't May 1st May Day, where they dance around the maypole, which is a pagan ritual? Isn't May 1st also the birth date of communism? Interesting. Order out of chaos. This is their seal. When someone puts a seal on anything, basically what they're saying is they're putting their stamp of approval. They're also saying that they're putting their stamp of ownership on that thing. And you notice that this seal was placed on the back of our dollar bill. Now, the reason that got there is because some of these groups that were forming the Illuminati involved some of our dear forefathers. You see, some of our dear forefathers weren't the men we were taught that they were. For instance, good old Benjamin Franklin. Good old Ben, that founded electricity, discovered electricity, flying a kite, the key struck him. It didn't also tell you that he was a member of a group called the Rosy Cross, which are called the Rosicrucians. They believe in human sacrifice, but yet they rewrote history. They knew they had to do that at one point in time. Now what you're seeing is their seal. Let's break that down. If you look up at the top, it's in Latin and it says Annuit Coeptus. If you translate that, it says announcing the birth. Novus Ordo Seclorum is new order of the ages. You'll notice also that there are blocks going across the base of that pyramid. There's 13 blocks, or 13 basic cement blocks making up the base of that pyramid. That does not stand for the 13 colonies. It stands for the 13 most powerful families at that time, bloodline of the Illuminati. You'll also notice that at the top of that, the capstone is away from the base, which means that they don't have everything completed. When the new seal comes out, that capstone will be set on top of that base, and that will mean that everything is completed and as one. That is not the all-seeing eye of God, that's the all-seeing eye of Lucifer. And that's the illumination. What you're seeing, the bright part around that, is the illumination, or referring to it, the Illuminati. We have to ask ourselves, do we see the signs? Because, see, God has been showing us signs after signs after signs. You remember the old country, or I guess it's not old, but you remember the country song, here's your sign? That's kind of what God is saying, here's your sign. We've got to start looking for those things and seeing those. And there's a lot of things out there that we're really not catching that we really should be looking into. For instance, look here. Caution, New World Order ahead. Potential hazards may include military draft. Gee, could that have anything to do with depopulation? World War III, forced vaccinations, brothers and sisters, that's one of the things that are right around the corner. Forced vaccinations. Prison industrial complexes, and elite controlled depopulation. Now, wait a minute. Do you mean to tell me that there is a group of people or a nation that basically looks and says, we've got too many people on the earth, we need to get rid of some of them? Absolutely. Absolutely. As hard as it sounds. What I'm doing now is I'm going to go through the cards. I'm going to show you exactly the deck that God pulled out. Not me. This is what the Lord pulled out and put in that deck, and this is the order of the things. So what you're going to see is the order that God put these things in. The first one that came up was the Protocols of Zion, the Elders of Zion. And what you see are two men here. This was minutes of a meeting held by the Elders of Zion. It's a very powerful Zionist group. If you ever get a chance to read the Protocols of Zion, it's a huge, thick manuscript. But basically what it says is that we're like cattle, we're like sheep, we need to be led. And governments can't do it. So remember that Adam Weishaupt said secret societies can lead better than government, that they can do it in a much more efficient manner. So we don't know what's best for us. We need what decisions made for us, and so that's what the Protocols of Zion is all about. The next card that came up was Templars, the Knights Templars, and this represents the start of the secret societies. The Knights Templars were actually Catholic French monks, and they were Christian. Now, what happened was we had these monks that were in a monastery, and this monastery was being attacked constantly by a Shiite Muslim group run by a man named Asani. And Asani is where we get the word assassins, because his men were proficient in one thing, and that was killing their victims. And then after they killed them, what they would do would be to sever their heads from their bodies. Now, the monks were getting attacked, they were getting killed off, and all the knights were off in different crusades, doing other things, so they couldn't get any protection. So what the Templars decided to do was to form their own army. Onward Christian soldiers, these were probably the first ones. Because what happened was they started training in military strategies and became very efficient in military tactics and fighting. So here you had monks that were going from township to township, and they were going and they were ministering, and they were doing good things, bringing food to the poor and things like that. But if they were ever attacked, they could fight back. So what happened was these people got a little bit too big for their britches. And the Catholic order began to look at this thing because young men wanted to be a Knights Templar more than they did a priest. And it got real popular that the young man would strive to go into this order of the Knights Templar rather than go into priesthood. So the Catholic order got real disturbed about this, and they decided that what they would do would be to ban them. And what they did was they made accusations that they were practicing witchcraft and occult rituals within the Catholic Church, and that's when they would get under suspicion, and then they went under inquisition, and then they were banned. People thought at that time that they had just gone out, that no more were the Knights Templars. Brothers and sisters, all Masonic order is the underground of the Knights Templars. The next card was rewriting history. See, the Illuminati knew they had to control education, because in public schools we were turning out children that were far too smart. You've seen, our children now, we have a lot of our children now can run computers better than we can. I'll be at home, and sometimes I'll be typing on my computer, and sometimes it'll freeze up, and my little 5-year-old daughter will walk in there. I'll be beating on that thing, trying to get that thing. And she'll say, "Daddy, you're going to break it." And I said, "Oh, I'll get this thing." She'll walk in there, and she'll take a key and hit it, and it's right back to where it should be. And I'll sit there and, "Thanks, dear." But we've got children that are smart. So what they decided to do was to do a dumbing down program. And that's why our children can't get the type of education that they need now, and the type of education that we would really love for them to have. Is because they were turning out to be too smart. We had to dumb them down a little bit. And what they decided to do was develop a program that would get their little minds in tune with other things and take their minds off of the true things, mathematics, English, all those things that they would need later on in life. One of those tools that they're using, don't forget this name, is Scholastic Inc. Because Scholastic Inc. is the organization that is responsible for getting Harry Potter into your school systems. They are also, about 3 weeks ago, I saw a news article which it said that Scholastic Inc. was now getting ready to come out with an even more exciting character than Harry Potter. Even more powerful, it said, than Harry Potter. And in their words, it said, it will captivate your child's attention. See, it's all for purpose. It's all designed to do that. You see, when you see all these videos and you see all this information come forward, there's no doubt anymore that there's a conspiracy. No doubt. I mean, it used to be, well, we think there's a conspiracy, we really don't know. There's no doubt there's a conspiracy. It's just we don't know who all's involved in it yet. But don't forget that name, Scholastic Inc. Power corrupts. Adam Weishaupt made a clear statement. He said, "Give me control of a nation and its money, and I care not who writes its laws." When they put the seal on the back of our dollar bill, that basically said we're giving the stamp of approval to the money. It also meant we own the finances. Now, think about that. That's true, because if you have a nation's money, you basically have that nation at the throat. And if you kill that financial institution that nation is run on, you can kill that nation. You can destroy that nation. Brothers and sisters, that financial collapse is just around the corner also. That's what they plan to do. Auditor from hell. There's a high price to pay for having absolute power. Remember that these people not just serve Satan. That's their master. And Satan always, always, always demands a sacrifice for what he gives. You know, when God gives you something, he gives it freely. When he gives you a gift, he gives it freely. And he doesn't take it back. Satan's not the same way. You cross him and pretty much you're out the door. So one of the things he demands is blood sacrifice. Well, they're not going to sacrifice their own selves or anyone in their own family. So what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to choose one of us, the innocents. I thought this was kind of an interesting card because, see, there actually is a book of Kells. It's a magical grimoire or a magical book written way back in the ancient times. And what it says is basically that it shows you step by step by step how to go about summoning up these demonic powers where you can make these blood pacts with. And that's what the book of Kells is. So what I believe the Lord is saying is a deal was struck and a pact was made for ownership of America. Now, I was in Baltimore and a lady came up and she said, have you ever seen the map of the layout of the Capitol area? And I don't know if anyone's seen it yet or not, but it's out. I mean, you can even go on the internet and find it. But it's a layout of the Capitol. And if you go from point to point, in other words, if you go from like the White House to the Washington Monument and over to some other monuments and other points, it actually forms a five-pointed inverted star. Well, that's not by coincidence. That's by design. The Masonic Order are the ones who designed that. So a blood pact was made using the innocents for sacrifice. Well, remember, they're not going to sacrifice their own selves, so the sacrifice became you and I, the innocents. And a hex was placed over this nation. You don't think we have a spell over this nation now? That's why the United States of America and other countries will never be the superpowers they once were. They'll never be the military powers, they'll never be the financial powers, the trade powers, all those things they once were, because now a spell had been placed and cast over our country, over our nation. The goal was to thrust us into the hand of madness. And here you see the illustration of the globe, the world, the blood running out underneath the hand. We had violence. We had war after war after war. We had conflict. And we needed something to come in and really establish our country as a power. At that time, we had two facets of political power in office. One, we had the Democrats. Now, these were the liberals. And what the Democrats basically say is, well, if it's good for Uncle John and Aunt Mary and it's good for the nation, then basically we're going to go along with it and we'll vote on it. Those are the liberals. Now, you notice in the picture, in the illustration, you got a girl there. She's praying, but look what she's praying to. A jackass. Then the next you had were the Republicans. Those are the conservatives. They're more conservative in all the things that they do. And you notice here a little bit more described man, and he's praying to an elephant. More satirical. Now, Adlai Stevenson made a really interesting remark. He said, if the Republicans will stop telling lies about the Democrats, we'll stop telling the truth about them. So here you had the two most political powers in the nation that were supposed to be making all of our decisions for us, supposed to be making a governing body for us, and they couldn't get along. And they couldn't get any kind of decisions made because they couldn't agree on anything. Something had to happen, and someone had to step in to take these two political powers and bring them together and unite them as one. So watch what happens. Enter George the janitor, George Bush Sr. George Bush Sr. was known as the cleanup man to the Illuminati. You notice he said, boss, their dumpster was full. I got as much as I could. And he's got a piece of paper that was thrown away. George Bush was put into office for one basic reason, and that was to establish the United Nations as the world police. Saddam Hussein, that was the next card that came up. He's the ruler of the small country of Iraq. He was the hater of Israel. The problem was that the United States of America supplied him with anthrax and conventional weapons to use against his enemies. Well, guess who his enemies turned out to be? Us! War games. War is good for a nation's economy. Absolutely. You've got a nation that's going down financially, start a war. Because people will give in to the war machine before they'll give in to anything else. And if you can convince a nation or convince a people that war is inevitable, that war is purposeful, that it's necessary, people will give their money into the war machine before they'll give to anything else. Because we've got to win. Remember that in all these games, even in war games, The primary goal of that whole game is you be the winner. You're the survivor. So, what do? We told Saddam Hussein, who actually moved into a little state of Kuwait, who wanted to take those people over and start dominating them, we told dear old Saddam he needed to get out. We told him several times, he didn't listen. So what did we do? Well, George went and got together a coalition of other nations, convinced them the same thing, that this war was inevitable, that we needed to go over and do that, and we actually went over there and kicked Saddam out. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that was a good move. I think we should have taken him out of that country. However, remember at the end of the war, Colonel Schwarzkopf, the man who was the head of the United States military powers over in Iraq, stated that, I remember watching on CNN one night, the end of it, and they had all these cameras, taking pictures of the end. And I remember him radioing back, and he said, "We have a clear road to Baghdad." Now, let me explain what that means. That means the Republican Guard had been removed. That meant that they didn't have any opposition in front of them whatsoever. They were in a tank group. They could have rolled into Baghdad and taken out Saddam Hussein. What was he told? Turn around. Now think about that. Militarily, that doesn't even make logic. Because you have a dictator in there that's going to be problems later on. You don't leave him in office, you take him out when you have the chance. But we didn't do it. We turned around. See, the real reason we went over there is because that's where our oil interest is. And we knew that there was going to be an energy crisis. We knew that oil was running short over in the United States. So we wanted to protect those oil interests. And that's why we went over there. This is an interesting card because what it represents here, you're seeing the man with the hard hat. You're seeing the tattoo on his arm there. That represents the military and industrial power of the nation. The man with the coat on and the dark hair, that represents our political power. That represents government. Look down at the bottom. We'll have to put something in the water. What's interesting is that they're shaking hands, but it's not fingertip to fingertip. It's wrist to wrist. Brothers and sisters, that is a secret society handshake. Now, at the end of the war, good old George made a congressional address right after that war. And in that, he said some interesting things. And nobody caught what he said. Nobody. Now look what he says. With this conflict and war now behind us, we must strive towards here it is, new world order and reach for the 1,000 points of light. And as soon as he said that, everybody in Congress stood up and gave him a 10 to 15 minute standing ovation. And nobody bothered to say, what's 1,000 points of light? That'd be the first thing we'd be asking, right? But nobody bothered to question that. And he said that at least 4 to 6 times. I talked to a lady just recently in Baltimore. She came up right after the meeting in Baltimore, and she came up and she said, everything that you said tonight, I can verify. She said, because I was George Bush's campaign manager. And she proved it. She pulled out the campaign manager badge that she had when she was campaign manager, when he was going for presidential election. And she said, I was there the night that he made that address. And she says, now I understand what that meant. Because she said, I looked at George and I said, after he stepped off the platform, I said, George, I don't know about that New World Order thing. She said, but I want to be a part of that 1,000 points of light. And she said, he grabbed her by the shoulder, looked her sternly in the face, and said, I have no control over that. Now, what's interesting is that term, 1,000 points of light, is actually a Masonic term. And what you're seeing here is an actual Masonic symbol. And you see the compass actually is the base of the pyramid that we looked at on their seal. You see the capstone at the top, the all-seeing eye, and the illumination coming out of it. Because what it actually means is to reach the final illumination of man. If you will study the Masonic order, one of their main goals, or one of the main goals for a Mason to reach, is that final illumination, where you can become a god. And no wonder, because the god of the Masonic order is Lucifer. Watch this. Lucifer is the god of the Masonic order. In a book written by Bishop Albert Pike, let me tell you who he is. He is the man who is the forefather of Freemasonry. He is the man who brought Freemasonry over to the United States from Wales. And in a book that if you're ever able to get a hold of it, most of the time you go into the libraries and people will tell you that they no longer have it. Somebody stole it out of the libraries. Or if you go on the internet, you can basically get it. But it's called Morals and Dogmas of the Ancient Accepted Scottish Rite, page 304. It says, Lucifer, the light bearer, strange and mysterious name to give to the spirit of darkness. Lucifer, the son of the morning, is it he who bears the light, and with its splendors intolerable, blinds feeble, sensual, or selfish souls? And then he says, doubt it not. On page 321, he says, yes, Lucifer is God. So there you have it. And what he's actually referring to is a global Luciferian network. Remember, I told you this thing is so vast, it's not just nationwide, it's global-wide. If we had a small globe, a small plastic globe of the world, and we had like little pinpoint lights all inside of that thing, and we were to turn off all the lights in the room and just turn that globe on, where all you saw were those little lights, that's how vast this thing is. That's why they're able to establish what they're wanting to establish, and that's why they're close to getting done what they've had planned for the longest time, ever since 1776. Oh, by the way, did you notice on the base of the pyramid, there's also Roman numerals written at the bottom of that? For the longest time, people said it said July 4th, 1776. It's not. It's May 1st, 1776. The exact day that the Illuminati was founded. Remember, when they put their seal or their stamp of approval on something, they're also putting ownership on that thing. So enter Bill Clinton. And you notice Bill is illustrated here with a dog collar around his neck and a leash going off to the side. Well, maybe Hillary, I guess. I don't know. And then Bill Clinton, he was the governor of Arkansas. He swept the presidential vote and was placed into office to do two things.
I'm going to stop the broadcast right there, but I really encourage you to call in and get this DVD or go to prophecyclub.com. It's called Illuminati Game or Blueprint for World Domination. Normally valued at $30. We're going to make it available today for just $15. A gift of $15 to the ministry goes for a good cause, and it gets some really good information into your hands. 785-266-1112 or prophecyclub.com. 785-266-1112 or prophecyclub.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your prayers, and thank you for your gifts of support. God bless. Now from the Prophecy Club, some exciting opportunities for you. There are 30 scriptures in the Bible which say in the last days massive amounts of oil will be discovered in Israel, and we believe we've been given the directive to use this prophesied oil and gas to fund worldwide soul winning. If you have questions about our vision, call 877-OIL-ISRAEL or 877-645-4772. The next speaker at the Prophecy Club is Doug Hemp. Doug has written 4 books and made 19 DVDs and speaks around the globe. The reason people listen to him is because he reads Greek and Hebrew. Topics will be a graphic new look at the second coming in Armageddon. Moments after the heavens pass away, Jesus will come down to the Mount of Olives. His feet will break the mountain in two. The Battle of Armageddon will begin in Jerusalem, not in Megiddo. Second talk, the millennium. Once the heavens have passed away and the earth is ruined at the coming of Jesus, the Lord will recreate a new heavens and new earth at the beginning of the millennium. Third talk, the final rebellion. Satan's assault against the New Jerusalem. When Satan is released after 1,000 years, he'll convince the mortals to rebel, but fire from God will destroy all the mortals. That's Doug Hemp, Sunday, December 1, Prophecy Club, corner of Park and K in Plano. That's Doug Hemp, Sunday, December 1, Prophecy Club, corner of Park and K, speaking from 1:30 to 6:30, suggested door donation $10. See you there!